Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, I'm bringing you guys the running back zero strategy for fantasy football in 2020. I'm going to explain to you guys how the strategy works, and I'm going to show you guys a mock draft of me drafting using that running back zero strategy. Now, before I get into the video, I'd like to ask you guys, could please click that subscribe button down below. It's free, and I'm going to be producing content every single day to help you guys win your 2020 Fantasy Football Championship. So let's get right into it. So what is the running back zero strategy? Now, I already made a video yesterday, not yesterday, it was a few days ago, on the wide receiver zero strategy, which is pretty much the same thing, but instead of drafting for running back zero, you're not drafting any running backs in the first 4 or 5 rounds. In that strategy, you're not drafting any wide receivers in the first 4 or 5 rounds. So the main goal of this is to get so many high, safe picks at the wide receiver position, a nice quarterback, a nice tight end, and then try to go for those bold takes at running back. Those guys that are dart throws that you need to hit on to help you win your 2020 Fantasy Football League. Now, do I recommend doing the running back zero strategy? Honestly, no, I do not, because I don't think that this strategy could lead to you winning a majority of the time. I actually think loading up on running backs earlier is the better strategy, and I also think the best strategy for your fantasy football draft is to come in with a complete open mind. I don't think you should be locked in, hey, I got to get a running back in the first round, or hey, I got to get a wide receiver, or hey, I got to get a tight end in the first 3 rounds. Thinking all these things, you want to just keep a clear mind and let the draft come to you. So without further ado, we're going to do a running back zero mock draft. So we're going for the 10th overall spot in a 12-team PPR league. Now, wide receiver zero actually works the best, not wide receiver zero, I should say. Running back zero works the best in 3 wide receiver leagues. To me, you can really hammer onto 3 wide receivers early to really bolster your team, but it also works in 2 wide receiver leagues, especially in leagues that have flexes. I assume most leagues nowadays have flexes, so it really helps you load up on those wide receivers and the flex, or maybe even go a quarterback early and see how things end up turning out. So hopefully you guys understand the wide receivers or the running back zero strategy, and if you don't understand it, it will be very clear by the time we do this mock draft. So the roster positions for the mock: 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wideouts, tight end, kicker, defense, 6 bench spots, and a flex. So we're going to be drafting against the composite ADP of ESPN, Fantax, RT Sports, and Fantasy Football Calculator to give you guys a better idea of what we are drafting from. So let's get right into this video. So drafting from the 10 hole is typically one of the better spots for the wide receiver zero strategy. Now, not the wide receiver zero strategy. I'm sorry, I keep saying that. The running back zero strategy, because you can actually snag 2 elite wide receivers on the back end of the draft. Now, if you're going with one of the earlier picks, maybe your pick 4, I wouldn't recommend drafting a wide receiver unless your pick past pick 5, I would say, because at the beginning, I think it really load up on the running backs. If you're going to do it here with Michael Thomas, you're likely not going to get the swing of another elite wide receiver. So right there, I'd probably draft a tight end, a guy like Kelsey, who I think could really help bolster a team. So to look at the draft so far: Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas, Dalvin Cook, Derrick Henry, Alvin Kamara, Devontae Adams, and DeAndre Hopkins. So now we are going to be getting our first player of the video. So we're not drafting running backs who could completely say get out of here to all of the running backs, even though here to me the normal pick would be Joseph Mixon. But right now to me the pick is easy, since we're going to be going a wide receiver here, and that's Julio Jones. Now, I understand Julio Jones doesn't necessarily have that extreme upside that a guy like Tyreek Hill brings to you, but I think in the first round you want to make sure you're being as safe as possible. You got to make sure to wrap it up, and I'm going to be wrapping up my team by using Julio Jones, a guy who's bound to get 1,200 plus yards, 1,300 yards. I know he's only going to score like 4 fucking touchdowns because the guy just can't find a home in the end zone, but I think Julio Jones is going to produce yet again, as he has produced for the last 7 years of his NFL career. The guy's a certified beast, one of the best wide receivers maybe even ever. He's definitely in the top 20 list. So after we went with Mr. Julio Jones, I will put our team on the left side of the screen if you guys would like to see that. So after we went with Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill came out the board, followed by Joe Mixon, Kenyon Drake, and Chris Godwin. So notice here how at the first a bunch of picks are always going to be running backs. The first 7 picks, typically 6 out of 7 are going to be running backs, and then the wide receivers start to come. So notice this guy went with the same strategy we're using. He's using the running back zero, but the running back zero strategy is defined after the first 4 or 5 rounds. You got to get to round 4, round 5 before you can necessarily see that he's doing running back zero. This guy wide receiver zero so far out of the first 2 rounds. So this does kind of limit our opportunity here, because he did take Chris Godwin, my next best wide receiver, but that's okay with me because there are a bunch of guys here that I actually would very much consider. You could obviously go tight end or quarterback here, but to me that's a little bit too early. If I wanted a tight end, you have to be towards the back half of the second round for me to feel the value of drafting one. So looking at the board: Kenny G, Allen Robinson, Mike Evans, Evans, Juju, DJ Moore would be all guys that I would be kind of looking at, except for really Juju. But to me, the pick is between Mr. Kenny Golladay and DJ Moore. I have them both ranked very highly in my rankings. I actually have Kenny Golladay ranked one spot ahead of DJ Moore. So for me, he is going to be the pick. We saw him do it last year with Matt Stafford and without. So I think that really proves how good of a player Kenny Golladay is, doing it with some quarterback named David Blau out of Purdue, who you've probably never even fucking heard of before he ended up stepping foot on the NFL field. So I think we can see Kenny Golladay perform with or without Stafford, given that Stafford obviously hurt his back. I hope he's fine. It seems like he'll be fine. But if he ends up getting hurt, you won't be too pissed off, because I honestly think that he could perform with or without having that great elite potential quarterback in Matthew Stafford. So after we went with Kenny G, Josh Jacobs came out the board, followed by Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders, Travis Kelce, Lamar Jackson, George Kittle, Pat Mahomes. Then the third round commences. Mike Evans, CEH, Todd Gurley, Leonard Fournette, DJ Moore, Odell Beckham Jr., Adam Thielen, Allen Robinson, Juju Smith-Schuster. So notice in the second round, two of the big three tight ends to me came off the board in Kittle, Kelce. The other third is Andrews. I don't quite have Andrews right now in the same tier as Kelce and Kittle, but he is very, very close to me. And then the top two quarterbacks in a tier of their own, Lamar and Pat Mahomes, very typical for your at-home league in the second or third round. All four of those guys to end up going. Something also to note, notice in the first two rounds, it's majority running back. And then in round three, we're going to be seeing majority wide receivers round 3 and 4, because people have already snagged their running back. So we're going to go ahead and try and draft yet another wide receiver, potentially quarterback maybe, or a tight end at the running back position right here. Guys available: Melvin Gordon, Chris Carson, Le'Veon Bell. So right now, had I have gone the two players we already have on our roster, which is Julio Jones and Kenny Golladay, I might say, let me get a safety pick to me in Le'Veon Bell and then attack the wide receiver position again later. Or hey, let me go ahead and get Chris Carson and then attack the wide receiver position again later. But no, that's not the situation we're in. We're forced into a situation because that's how the video works. It's a running back zero strategy. But obviously, you could go a different way. To me right here, the pick would obviously be Le'Veon Bell. But looking at the wide receivers, I feel like there's not too much of a drop-off between a bunch of these guys that I think we could find in the fourth round. So for that reason, we're going to go ahead and select my tight end number 3, Mark Andrews. Now, I'm not a big fan of drafting a tight end early because I think it actually kind of has an impact on your team. But if you draft correctly, if the draft comes your way, then getting Mark Andrews is going to severely boost your team and push them up. Because for one thing, when you're drafting one of those late round tight ends, unless he's a for sure lock in your head like Hayden Hurst is for me, you're kind of throwing darts at these things. But Mark Andrews, you set it and forget it. That's one of the bonuses, is you never have to worry about the tight end. Unless he gets hurt, you legitimately have a guy locked in for 16 games that you know is going to perform. I believe that the Baltimore Ravens are going to kind of have to pass the ball a bit more. We saw up against the Tennessee Titans, they threw the ball 50 plus times because they figured out how to stop the run. And I think that might be the blueprint that was needed for the other teams to end up to figuring out how to stop the Baltimore Ravens. So I think we see Mark Andrews get much more involved this season, and even though he was heavily involved last year. So after we went with Mark Andrews, we can see that Zach Ertz came off the board, followed by Amari Cooper, Cooper Kupp, and Melvin Gordon. So to me, Zach Ertz is, while he's in the same tier as Mark Andrews, I kind of see them as two different guys because I really like Mark Andrews and I really dislike Zach Ertz. Now, Zach Ertz last season had a hell of a season. He played well, but the thing was the beginning of the season and the end of the season are two completely different seasons. Now, why is that? It's due to the fact that Zach Ertz ended up having a team around him that got absolutely clapped and they all got hurt, and then Zach Ertz emerged. When the team was all healthy, Zach Ertz was doing diddly squat for your fantasy football roster. So if you guys have enjoyed this video thus far, you thought any of this information was helpful, I would really love if you could click that subscribe button down below. So right now, our roster, we got Julio, Kenny Golladay, and Mark Andrews. Pretty easy so far to abide by the running back zero rule, even though our team probably would look 90 times better had we have drafted a running back at any of these spots. But with that said, I still believe our roster is one of the best rosters in this league, and as long as we hit on those late round running backs, which is what this strategy kind of emphasizes, if you hit on those guys, you could easily dominate this league, especially with the starting 3 guys we already have on our roster. So now we keep having to look for more positions that aren't a running back. Right here, Le'Veon still here, easy pick. Even maybe David Johnson would be worthy of a pick here. But now we are going to go ahead and attack our flex spot. I don't really want to take a quarterback in the 4th round, so we're going to go ahead and look for our wide receiver number 3 or our flex spot. So Robert Woods, Calvin Ridley are the big two guys here to look at. To me, it is close, but Robert Woods is just better to me. I really think that both of these guys are going to have amazing seasons. I just think the Rams are going to be flying high like they did late last season with Sean McVay. I think we see Robert Woods really have a great year, especially since Brandon Cooks got his ass skedaddled to Houston. They kicked him out because the Houston said, hey, I want another injury-prone wide receiver to add to my other injury-prone wide receiver. So now looking at the draft board, after we made our selection of Robert Woods, we see Le'Veon Bell, Chris Carson, A.J. Brown, Cortland Sutton, Calvin Ridley, David Johnson, Keenan Allen, Tyler Lockett, James Conner, T.Y. Hilton, D.K. Metcalf, D.J. Chark, Devontae Parker, Stephon Diggs, Terry McLaurin, A.J. Green, Jarvis Landry, Deebo Samuel. So right there you see 9 fucking wide receivers going around. That's just what's going to be happening. When people load up on running backs early, they try to get the wide receivers late. So actually, this does kind of, while it's annoying because a lot of the running backs that are the great ones that I want, there are still people here that I would happily draft at the running back position. But something important to note here, Deebo Samuel comes off the board in the 5th round, which is just a no bueno right now, as we don't know what's going to happen with Deebo Samuel. The guy ends up fucking up his foot. They're saying, oh, maybe he plays week 1, maybe he misses week 1. Come August, by the time you're really doing your fantasy drafts, I feel like we'll have a much better idea what Deebo Samuel is going to end up doing, or not really what he's going to end up doing, but what he's going to end up playing. Is he going to play the first couple of weeks? Because I'm very worried of drafting a guy that's injured already in the 5th round. I also saw AJ Green come off in the fucking 5th round, and I fucking hate that guy. It's just brutal with AJ Green. The guy just never ends up staying healthy. He's missed more than half of his games in the last 2 years. So we've made it all the way here, and to me, we are in the 5th round. So we're going to complete the running back zero strategy by going with 5 players in a row that are not a running back. Now, right here, to me, it screams out that we have to pick a guy like Jonathan Taylor with super high upside, a guy like David Montgomery, but we're not going to be able to do that, and I don't want to draft a 4th wide receiver considering we're not even going to be able to start him, even though I love Tyler Boyd so much. We're going to go ahead and snag quarterback Dakota Prescott of the Dallas Cowboys. He signs that franchise tag, even though they brutally fucked him right in the ass in Jerry's world and didn't allow him to get a bigger contract. But with that said, the guy's going to be a certified beast quarterback 2 last season. They add a new piece in CeeDee Lamb. I don't understand how anyone thinks Dak Prescott does not have the potential to be up there with Mahomes and Lamar Jackson this year. The guy's a certified fucking beast. After we went with Dakota Prescott, Devin Singletary comes off the board, followed by Hollywood Brown, Darren Waller, and Tyler Boyd. So now is when we hammer down on the running back. So Jonathan Taylor is still here, as is David Montgomery. So here is where you kind of have a tough decision, at least to me. Do you want the upside in Jonathan Taylor where you're not necessarily sure if he's going to play the first, well, he's going to play in the first 4 games, but is he going to do anything in the first couple of games? Or will Marlon Mack be overwhelmingly doing all the things in those games? Or do you want David Montgomery, who we've seen out what we saw out of him last year? He's kind of a safer pick. Not necessarily super safe, but he's more of a safe pick than Jonathan Taylor. Now, I have Jonathan Taylor ranked higher. I honestly think Jonathan Taylor in a lot of leagues is going to end up being a 3rd round pick, not a 6th round pick. But I could actually see David Montgomery falling much further. So I'm going to go with David Montgomery. I think Jonathan Taylor would be a good pick as well. But I feel like I know what I have in David Montgomery. And with the wide receiver core I have, if I can just have a guy that I feel is a bit safer as my running back one, I will happily do that. Now, obviously, some people are going to say, oh, Nick, your wide receiver and quarterback have the same bye. That's stupid. Don't worry too much on the buys. I do kind of worry about them, but don't make that be the decider in your pick. You want to make sure you have a team that's good to win all year long, and if you lose a week because you got a bunch of guys on that week, it doesn't really matter because you can fucking win every other game in that case. So looking at the draft board, after we went with my man, David Montgomery, Kyler Murray came off the board, followed by Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson. So something difficult to talk about is the quarterbacks in fantasy football because every league is so different when it comes to quarterbacks. In some leagues, you are going to legitimately see Lamar and Mahomes be first-round picks. Whereas in other leagues, you'll see them in the middle, maybe the 3rd round. And then there's going to be other leagues where there's more of these fantasy football, quote-unquote, experts in there where he falls to like the 5th round. So it really differentiates from every single league. In some leagues, you could see Lamar, Mahomes, Dak, Kyler, Russ, Watson, Brady, all gone before the 5th round. So I find it kind of complicated to try to show you guys how to draft a later round quarterback in the later rounds, but I don't even have to do that here because we already drafted Dak Prescott. There's a laundry list of names that I do like later in the draft, though. So Kyler Murray, Russ Wilson, Deshaun Watson, that typically happens once someone picks a quarterback, and then the next person's like, holy shit, now I need to get mine because he's not going to come back to me. And then the next guy goes, oh, I'm going to shit myself. I need another one. And the same thing happens with tight ends. You'll see Evan Ingram caught the board, then Tyler Higbee. I wouldn't have been surprised if that guy didn't draft Travis Kelce if another one came out the board after that, because tight ends and quarterbacks typically start the most runs in fantasy football. You see like a zillion of them go off in a row due to the fact that the position is kind of scarce, is very top heavy. After we see Tyler Higbee, but as is every fucking position except for a really wide receiver. After we see Tyler Higbee, Michael Gallup, Julian Edelman, Brandon Cooks, Will Fuller. Notice how the two injury-prone teammates go back-to-back. Michael Jordan, 96-97. Woo. Jonathan Taylor, very sly pick in the 7th round. Absolute steal. Thomas Brady, Tampa Bay Tom, Marvin Jones, Matty Ice Baby. Drew Brees, Josh Allen, Raheem Mostert, and Deontay Johnson. So now it is our turn up to bat our roster so far. If you look to the left side of your screen, you can see we have Dakota Prescott, David Montgomery, Julio Jones, Kenny Golladay, Mark Andrews, and Robert Woods. So a pretty solid roster so far. Now we're going to have to go ahead and dip back into the well and try to get another running back. Looking at the board, Mark Ingram is still available. DeAndre Swift, Kareem Hunt, Cam Akers, James White, Darius Geis, Tariq Cohen, Matt Breida, Philip Lindsay. To me, this is kind of a very easy pick, but I'm not too sure in your real at-home draft if Kareem Hunt will even fall this far to the 7th round is a bit crazy, but it could happen because a lot of people have the opinion Kareem Hunt's a fucking backup, Nick, you dumb motherfucker. A lot of people believe that. Now, I'm not saying you guys believe it because a lot of you guys who have been watching me for a while, you know about Kareem Hunt. You know how good my main man, Kareem Hunt, is. But if you're new, you might not know. Kareem Hunt, before he ended up with that incident, he was a top fantasy football running back. And then he does that. He gets suspended for 8 games. He comes back. He performs slightly better than Nick Chubb. Now, he's in a situation with Kevin Stefanski where they are going to run the ball more. He was the 4th most heavy run coach in the NFL last year as the offensive coordinator of the Minnesota Vikings. Now, he's going to be calling the plays. Now they're going to be running the ball even more in Cleveland. So I think we see Kareem Hunt really ball out. A super safe pick who has a lot of upside, catching passes on the ground, or obviously catching passes as well as running the rock. Another notable pick there, had he not have been available, I would have happily went with Cam Akers. I really think Cam Akers has a lot of potential this year to be one of those rookie running backs who just absolutely tears it up. I know Sean McVay said, it's a committee. It's not a fucking committee. Cam Akers is so much better than Darrell Henderson, and even if they go with the committee at the beginning of the year, eventually Cam Akers will emerge, especially as a running back 3. He's going to be riding the pine for my team. I almost feel when you're doing this strategy, you almost have to draft like 3 or 4 running backs in a row and then dip back into the wide receiver pool in order to have this strategy work. So after with Kareem Hunt, Aaron Rodgers, Carson Wentz, Mark Ingram, and DeAndre Swift. So now we'll happily pick the guy I was just speaking about in Cam Akers. If he falls to the 8th round, he's an insta-lock. The Rams are in a good situation to use him. Now, I understand that offensive line isn't as good as it used to be in the past. I understand maybe Todd Gurley is better than Cam Akers, but it doesn't fucking matter because Cam Akers now is going to be the head honcho. He comes out of college at FSU with a terrible line. He goes into the NFL with a team that doesn't have the greatest offensive line. He goes to a team now that is going to understand they need to use the 2 tight end set. The 11 personnel is what I believe it is called. And you know what that does? That adds an extra blocker because the tight end isn't necessarily going to actually go and fucking run down the field. He's going to try to block. So that's going to help Cam Akers, and Cam Akers is very good at blocking. So that's also going to help him get more usage on the field. So after we went with Mr. Cameron Akers of the L.A. Rams, we see Christian Kirk come off the board, followed by Jerry Jeudy, Jamison Crowder, Keyshawn Vaughn, Darius Geis, James White, Darius Slayton, Ronald Jones, Henry Ruggs, John Brown, and I thought A.J. Green was the worst pick of the draft. Psych, it was the San Francisco defense in the 9th round. Do not draft a defense in the 9th round. Wait till the last 2 rounds to do it. You're crazy if you do it any other way. Justin Jefferson, Sony Michel, Sterling Shepard, CeeDee Lamb, Tariq Cohen, Jordan Howard, and Damian Williams. This team went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 M's in my bank account. They actually went with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wide receivers in a row. Quite outrageous, if I'm being quite honest with you. Through 9 rounds, we have Dakota Prescott, David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, Julio, Kenny Golladay, Mark Andrews, Robert Woods, and Cam Akers. So now we're going to be looking for either a running back or a wide receiver here to me, because since we're going to have the pick at 9-10, then we swing back around 4 picks later and get our pick yet again. So you could really go either way. I think we're going to go with one running back and one wide receiver here. Now, right here is where, since we're doing this no running back strategy, the 0 running back strategy, I want to go with a more high upside pick here. Typically, I'd go with a safer pick like Phillip Lindsay. No, we're going high upside with Mr. J.K. Dobbins. Now, I understand J.K. Dobbins is the backup for Mark Ingram, but if Mark Ingram was to get hurt, I think we see J.K. Dobbins really effective in this Baltimore offense, and I could also see him getting a pass-catching role in that offense now, and even getting a limited amount of touches in a Baltimore offense that is very run-heavy, even though I think they're going to be more pass-heavy this year. We could really see the guy eat regardless, even in a late situation. Phillip Lindsay, Pittsburgh Steelers defense, another terrible pick. Mike Williams, and Marlon Mack. So now I think we attack the wide receiver core. We already have 3 wide receivers. We're going to go ahead and get a 4th since we already have 1, 2, 3, 4 running backs. Then we're going to go hammer more running backs immediately after this. No, I don't really think there's a real unless here. I think we're just going to go ahead and draft the wide receiver. So we're going to go with Mecole Hardman here. Super high upside wide receiver, absolute speedster in Kansas City. With Sammy Watkins potentially not wanting to play, now he really emerges as the wide receiver 2 on that team. We saw him be an absolute beast in multiple games last year. He's kind of a firecracker you throw into your fucking offense. And unlike Jason Pierre-Paul, I highly doubt that firework is going to blow up in your hand. I think it's really going to help you, but we got absolutely sniped for the pick I actually wanted. So after we went with Mecole Hardman, Robert Woods came off the board, followed by Preston Williams, not Robert Woods, Rob Gronkowski, Preston Williams, Kerryon Johnson, Matthew Breida, Darrell Henderson, Ravens defense, Hunter Henry, Anthony Miller, Jared Cook, Latavius Murray, Tevin Coleman, Alexander Madison, Jalen Reagor, Buffalo Bills defense, Patriots defense, Austin Hooper, Michael Pittman, Zach Moss is the player I wanted. Also, Alexander Madison in the 11th round to me is kind of a really big steal, considering Dalvin Cook right now is holding out. Now, what is my opinion on it? I think he comes back, but you never know with these fucking running backs. It's really impossible to tell unless you know Dalvin Cook personally and can ask him. Now, why I liked Zach Moss at this pick is actually because I think we're to see a big split share between Zach Moss and Devin Singletary. I actually had a video a couple of days ago called Overlooked Players in Fantasy Football, and Zach Moss is one of those players because I really think he has a lot of high upside this year. So I kind of almost wish we drafted Zach Moss and didn't go with Mecole Hardman. But with that said, there are still running backs back here in the draft that I actually think have a lot of upside. First here, we're going to go with Duke Johnson. Now, I understand that Bill O'Brien is a dense motherfucker when it comes to using a pass-catching running back. He didn't really use Duke Johnson all that much last year. But with that said, now they don't really have anyone besides David Johnson and Duke Johnson. The Johnson and Johnson backfield like they're your baby's soap. So Duke Johnson is going to get the opportunity, potentially, if David Johnson gets hurt like he's been in the past. So I think Duke Johnson's actually a steal back here. He's like a guy I've been drafting for the last fucking 5 years of my fantasy career. He's just a pass-catching running back you snag late in the draft. You can play him some games when your running backs are on a bye week. So after we went with Mr. Duke Johnson III, it's not even actually what he is, the Earl Duke of Johnson, Robbie Anderson, Tony Pollard, Golden Tate, and Matty Snapback. So if you guys have enjoyed the video thus far, please make sure to click that subscribe button down below and click that notification bell so you guys get notified for every single video. And leave down below in the comments, if you made it this far, who do you prefer to draft, Gronk or Austin Hooper? So now it is my turn to make my picky pick yet again. Now, something also to note in this draft has nothing to do with the running back 0 strategy, but the quarterbacks. Now, only one team has picked 2 quarterbacks, but what do you guys typically do when someone takes another quarterback? Because in a lot of leagues, when you're in with your friends, there's going to be people taking 2 quarterbacks. Some motherfuckers will take 3. So to me, what that means, if you're waiting on quarterbacks, say we hadn't picked Dak, this is when I go ahead and try and pick a quarterback because I'm kind of worried about them falling back to me. That's just something important to note. So now it is our pick again. I am going to end up moving the camera that's on your screen right now to the top of the screen so that you guys can actually better see the board when it is our when we're looking at the bottom picks. So our team so far, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running backs, so it's important to have more running backs than wide receivers on your roster. I typically don't draft 2 quarterbacks or 2 tight ends, especially if you go super highly on them. I would not advise doing that. So now we are drafting our next running back here. And to me, the next pick is Boston Scott. I understand he's a handcuff, but he's Miles Sanders' handcuff, and he has showed off his talent last year. If Miles Sanders was to get hurt, I really think Boston Scott easily slides into that role and has a very productive bunch of games in that situation. And if Miles Sanders was to get hurt, you just ship Boston Scott to that guy. And if you don't want to play him, you can just go ahead and trade his ass. So we have 6 running backs right now, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 wide receivers. So we could either go 6 and 5 or 7 and 4. To me, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to go ahead and go another wide receiver since I actually want to talk about this guy. And that is probably, there's a bunch of guys here, but I think I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk because as of right now, I think he's the biggest benefactor to the fact that Deebo Samuel ended up getting hurt. So if that situation does actually happen where he's missing week 1 or week 2, week 3, week 4, we could see Brandon Ayuk really emerge in that offense. And I think he's one of those guys that you draft and you just instantly sell him right after the guy blows up week 1. You fucking fire off a million trades. Get Brandon Ayuk the fuck off your team because he's going to fucking sizzle down because that team likes to run the ball so much. But for the first couple of weeks, he could be a real diamante in the rough. So now we have completed our draft pretty much. We just have to draft a defense and a goddamn kicker, which is the most fun part of the draft. Not. So after that, we went Brandon Ayuk, then Minnesota Vikings, Carlos Hyde, Dallas Goedert, and Damian Harris. So now it's time for me to show you how to draft a kicker and a defense. So for kicker, it's pretty fucking easy. You scroll down and you draft the best one. I actually will have kicker rankings in my draft guide. I'll probably even make a video about it. Not too complicated, not something you have to really overthink. So now for defenses, this is where you actually got to use your big brain and you got to think. So for week 1, you're trying to draft based off of week 1. What is a defense playing a shitty offense week 1? You draft that defense. Now, right now, I haven't done all that in-depth research about it. It's only June, but come July, I will have all that research. The teams playing the shitty fucking week 1 opponents. So you draft one of those guys. I'm not too sure who the Rams are playing. They're the highest ranked team. If you look at their games, they're playing Dallas week 1, so that's a team you obviously don't want anything to do with because Dallas is a high-powered type of offense. The Eagles get Washington week 1. You draft them. The Washington Redskins will probably throw a couple picks. So our team, we get a C+, probably due to the fact that we went with the running back zero strategy, but I actually think we have a very solid team that if David Montgomery and Kareem Hunt play good enough, we could easily absolutely skull fuck teams in this league. So looking at our roster, we got Dak Prescott, David Montgomery, Kareem Hunt, Julio Jones, Kenny Golladay, Mark Andrews, kicker and defense, and then we have Robert Woods on our team, and our bench is comprised of Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, McCole Hardman, Duke Johnson, Boston Scott, and Brandon Ayuk. So thank you guys all for watching this video. If you ended up enjoying, please make sure to click that subscribe video or button down below. I'll see you motherfuckers again tomorrow with another video or a podcast. If you're listening to this on podcast, please leave a rating and a review. I love you all. Click on one of the videos on the screen. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye, my friends.